The biggest problem I hear from colleagues who aren't doing very much research is that they don't have time for it. I've seen this happen multiple times over my entire career. It started off, or when I was a young professor, I recognized some colleagues who were still working on their dissertation. So a lot of times, someone will complete their doctoral coursework and start working on their research, their dissertation, which is what you need to complete and defend in order to earn your doctorate. Um, they would be working on it for years and years, and then just not have the, I don't know, the fortitude to see it through. And they would always complain, like, there's not time for it, or there are too many other responsibilities, and so on. And then fast forward to more recently, I've worked with colleagues on research projects, and I'm trying to mentor them. So I don't just want to outsource work to them and tell them what to do. I want to invite them to participate in the process. So I take something that I might be able to do in a day or a week and I explain what needs to happen. And I let them do it so that they can learn the aspects of the process, such as submitting an article to a journal or doing the final formatting for a journal submission. Um, Interacting with an editor, changing the formatting from APA to MLA or to Chicago, all of these sort of tedious processes that I've done hundreds of times, um, trying to let someone else do it so they can get experience and start to feel proficient in the process and less intimidated by it. That was a word I was looking for in the previous video. But then I hear back from them in a month or two is saying, I just didn't have time for it. So I'm speaking to those of you who believe, or perhaps genuinely, do not have time to conduct research. And I want to give a couple of strategies for creating time, making time, or blocking time, and making it more attractive to do all of those things. So I'm a psychologist before I'm a teacher educator. So I always view the inability to find time as the disinterest in finding time. So if someone says they don't have time for research, what I hear is they don't want to do research that much. There are other things that are more important to them. And so if something is a genuine priority, you will make time for it because it is a priority. If it is a bigger priority than something else in your life, then it'll be easier to do the priority than it will be to do whatever is always taking time for it. Now, the details of that decision, even if it's an unconscious decision, are murky at best. So it's easy to let someone else fill your schedule if you're not committed to filling your own schedule. So, for example, I might, if I'm a yes man, I might be willing to say yes to a new committee formation. Will you chair the committee? Yes, I'll chair the committee. If I'm not taking control of my schedule, I'll let someone else fill my schedule with things that I don't prioritize. So, again, um, it's tricky when it comes. This is lifestyle design. This is scheduling 101. But you need to be the one committed to making this change in order for it to work. Okay, so um, I think a whole video could be made about that. And if you're interested, let me know. Perhaps I'll do it. But right now, I just want to talk about the decision to make time for research. This is assuming it's a priority for you. You want to do it, or even if you're not already doing it, you're committed to beginning. The very first, most basic recommendation is to block time for it. And by block time, I mean set aside a period in your day or in your schedule that you are devoted to your research project. And at the beginning, that might be committed to just like brainstorming topics or journaling about what's working in your classroom and what problems you're having. So it doesn't mean like, okay, it's my first day, I better start writing the article. No, no, that's going to happen way later. You're not even ready to ask a research question yet. And so that this is about how to design the time once you have it. That's a later topic. Right now, I just want to talk about making time for it. Begin with a slot or a block that is reasonable. So if you might think that 2 hours is a reasonable goal, cut that in half, maybe cut it down to a quarter. If you can commit to 30 minutes a day or 30 minutes every other day, so maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you will spend 30 minutes, do it. Start there. If that seems easy, good. You want an achievable goal. This is Behavior Modification 101. The book Atomic Habits by James Clear is a great start in making these basic behavioral changes, but it's just the science of B.F. Skinner and behavior modification. So give yourself an achievable goal and stick to it. The most prolific academics have a shockingly small daily writing commitment. It might be 15 or 30 minutes, or like 150 words a day. That's nothing. You can do that in 20 minutes, or 10 minutes, or 5 minutes if you already know what you're going to write about. Start with something simple. So maybe it's 30 minutes once a week. If you can commit yourself to it, those hours, those blocks stack up over time, and you'll be shocked with how much you can accomplish 30 minutes a week. I would recommend, if you're just getting started, do 30 minutes 2 or 3 times a week and be committed to it. Say, all right, between 8 and 8:30, or maybe you have a lunch or a planning hour and give yourself 20 minutes of that hour to focus on a research project. And don't do anything but focus on that research project. So at the beginning, it might just be journaling. You might be journaling for a whole month, but what you're doing is building the foundation to get that research project started. You have to set time aside for it and get in the habit of using that time for that purpose. Even if for that 20 minutes you're just staring at a blank notebook. You might stare at a blank notebook for a total of an hour and 15 minutes over a week and a half, but that's progress. That means the hour and 15 minutes of staring at an empty notebook is now gone, and you're only moving forward from there. So don't beat yourself up if you're not using that time as productively as possible. The worst thing you can do is pick a block of time that you can't commit to. And so then you start saying, oh, I didn't do a whole hour. I only did 45 minutes. I got to make up for that the next time, do an hour and 15. You're just digging yourself a hole. You're going to hate the process. You're going to resent yourself for not being effective. So block a reasonable amount of time for it. Something that seems easy. Okay. If blocking time is impossible, I'm sorry, I don't have 20 minutes to set aside, even twice a week. That might mean you have to create time for it. A way to do this would be to come up with a list of all of your responsibilities. What do you spend time doing? Make the whole list, write it out, and then rank order them in terms of importance. So, how important they are to your family, your personal life, your professional life, and how interested you are in them. And I'm borrowing this from the uh, author of Grit, and I think her name is Duckworth, if I'm not confusing her with someone else. But a great way to understand like what you need to focus on is to do these two columns. What's important, or how important it is, and how interested you are in it, and then like multiply those two numbers to get the value of it, and then rank order them, and then pick the ones at the very bottom and cut them out. Just get rid of them. They're either unimportant or you're not interested in them, and so they're not priorities to you. Cut something out and then fill it with your writing block or your research block. That's going to be hard because it's a habit change. Back to the James Clear book, Atomic Habits, if you want more help or guidance for that process. But yeah, you're going to have to pluck a few things from your schedule. Try to think of an example for my own life. I guess what I pluck out are committees I'm not interested in. So most committees, I'll be honest, are somewhat important. Earlier in my career, I wanted to admit that they were all useless and worthless, and I complained about them. But as long as they've been designed around a mission, they're important, and universities and I imagine schools benefit from them. But I was doing too many of them and I wasn't interested in them. So I started saying no. And when I did that, my schedule opened up more so that I could have a block in the afternoon and a block in the morning to work on my research. Pretty soon, I had more time than I knew what to do with, which meant I either needed to increase my research productivity or begin adding more committees back in. So maybe that's a question for you later down the road. But if you don't have any time, make a list of where you're spending your time, maybe document a few days, and see if there isn't time to be found somewhere, maybe that you're just wasting, or maybe that you can cut something out that's not very important to you. I mentioned this in the first video, but it's a lot easier to be committed to a research project if it's something that you care about or that appeals to you. So if you are, let's say you teach middle school social studies and you're just not that interested in it, or you're having trouble building like a passion for it, but you really love sports, well, let that be your entrance point and find a way to understand your students from that perspective or understand your learning goals from that perspective. And off the top of my head, I'm thinking of like student athletes, so students who participate in one or more sports and maybe trying to understand how that affects their involvement in school. Um, you might think you're being selfish. Like here, you've got this discipline that you don't care so much about, or you've lost your passion for, um, and now you're just going to focus on your interests. Well, your students have interests too, and you might be able to find a way to study how involvement in sports in the entire middle school influences student achievement in the classroom or morale or the relationships that they build. So start with something that you genuinely care about or that interests you, that you don't feel like you're wasting time or banging your head against the wall by researching it. For me, um, I've always been profoundly interested in understanding problems that emerge in my classroom. So a few years ago, after COVID, there was this, now I understand, international phenomenon where students just stopped attending classes, large numbers of students missing a large number of classes. And I got so frustrated in my classrooms because I'd have 20, 30, 40% of students show up, not absent. This is all that showed up. And I started to doubt my own abilities as an instructor. Um, I started doubting about my career choice, and I desperately wanted to fix the problem. So I started reading about it. I started interviewing students about it. I organized a study to investigate it further. I'm on I think my second study now. I've collected a lot of different forms of data, done a lot of reflecting, read a lot about it, and I was motivated by just a concern. And so I've never had trouble coming up with topics because it's my job, teaching. And so I'm always wondering about what is the best way to solve a problem or what the new problems are. Always sort of wondering, is the new generation, so like now I'm getting a lot of Gen Z students, is this generation going to be fundamentally different? Not necessarily bad, but just different. And if so, in what ways and how can I better meet their needs and understand them, and learn together with them? So though I have no shortage of questions that I'm interested in pursuing. I just have a shortage of hours. And that's not making time. It's just I have too many questions to ask all at once. I need a whole team of like 100 people that I can outsource all these problems to. But then I'd be like, did you do it well enough? I'd want to micromanage all of them. So back to you. Maybe brainstorm. Maybe your first 20-minute block could be spent brainstorming what you like about your job, about the classroom, about learning, about your school, about your students, what interests you. And maybe if you're having trouble coming up with that list, just make a list of what interests you in general. What things do you think about in your free time? What are your hobbies? What is it about those hobbies that you enjoy? Start making like a map of all of these things and see where the connection points are. But this will all be easier if you're focused on something that interests you. And we've got Adelaide joining us behind us. Hey, girl. All right, the next step is to develop a specialty. Now, I don't expect that many of you will get here anytime soon if you're just getting started, but this is a great goal to shoot for. Going back to the hypothetical social studies teacher who is interested more in football and girls basketball than teaching social studies, they might become the resident expert, the school liaison for sport involvement and student achievement. Maybe they'll join an athletic club as like a teacher sponsor, a faculty sponsor. Programs need that. And so if you're just kind of tracing out an area of interest and you're more interested in it than other people, you're going to be more willing to spend time committed to that, developing it, understanding it more, researching it, studying it. It won't take long. You'll be shocked at how quickly you become an expert. And now, if anyone has a question about how athletics are influencing student morale, they're going to come to you. And within a couple of years, you're going to be called up by the school superintendent if a problem emerges about athletic involvement or about maybe travel and how it impacts um, students' GPAs or how it impacts their mental health. You're going to be the nexus point. Um, and then if you stick with it for like another 5 years, you might find your master's or your doctor of education organized around these questions. And now you're going to be like the regional expert. It's not just going to be your school who contacts you, it's going to be other schools or maybe all around the state or all around the region of your country, reaching out to you, trying to understand what you know better. Once you start developing that expertise, by the way, the research that you conduct gets better and easier. I used to document how long it took me to like see a research project through beginning to end, like how many hours I spent on it and how long it took me to develop an article. And just to give you a ballpark estimate, my first article took me like 12 months to write and then revise and submit and like go through all of that process. And now it's not unusual for me to like be done with most of the process in a week. Um, I focus on different things, different aspects of the process, and I think my work is significantly better now. But it's also so much easier for me to do. Um, and that goes also for developing interest in a topic. So once I write an article about autism, for example, that initial like immersion in literature on that topic of like neurodivergence and autism spectrum disorders um, is very time inefficient. I'm spending a lot of time reading a lot of different articles, looking at a lot of different perspectives, seeing what's been done, trying to understand how that intersects with the people that I interact with, some of the research questions I'm interested in. Once you write the first article, the second one is much easier, and then it's like a cascade, and your depth of knowledge improves. So as you get through this process, you're going to find it easier and easier, and pretty soon if you stick with the same topic, you're going to be an expert. And this will probably open doors for you that you never expected. You'll find yourself further along in your career and perhaps on a different career trajectory than you thought was possible. Um, and this all started with beginning with one of your interests. Okay, that takes us through what I had designed around how to make time for it. So there are a couple of different plans of attack. I'm trying to think if I left anything out. I'm going to reiterate that first point, blocking time for it. You will be astonished at how much work you get done if you can commit yourself to a very simple block of time, something that seems so easy. But the easier it is, the simpler it will be to implement in your life and do it consistently. Time, at first, it won't feel like you're doing a lot, but then you'll blink and it'll be 6 months later, and you'll look at how many studies you've done, how much data you have, how much you've learned, and you'll be blown away that you did it all on like 1 hour a week, broken up into three 20-minute slots. So pick a time, stick to it. I guarantee you, it will probably change your life.